her roommate just tested positive. So we're dealing with like, what do we do if a staff member like tests positive, right? So
Good times, good times. Yeah, no, I
yeah,
got an email. I've gotten a couple of emails since the. It's funny because since the closure, we've gotten. I've we didn't think there was many outbreaks in Ontario, and then since the closure, I've learned about three, and they were all non-FIC members, and
right.
they were all in spin studios and boot camps. So they were all in cardio type classes and enclosed spaces.
Yeah.
So I'm just yeah, it's definitely an interesting time here in Toronto for sure. Everyone's gone right back to that sort of stage 2 mentality. I mean that outside of it, like even seeing Thanksgiving weekend,
Yeah.
People were like canceling plans and everything else. So
Yeah, and that's what's needed. And what I alluded to on my provincial meeting was that the provinces have the data, like they know where the outbreaks are happening. So for us to say that we're safe and it's don't worry, come rush in here, it's like, well, they know it's not happening in strength studios here, but like you mentioned, it's happening in the cardio-based studios because they're not following the guidelines, basically.
Well, they are actually. That's the thing, is that from what I understand, the places where it's happened, people have been 2 meters apart. Ventilation, I'm not sure of. Like no one, that's not clear. But like they're aerobic studios, so you imagine they have decent ventilation.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a matter of it's inevitable, right? And this is one of the things that I tried to explain in the Ontario meeting on Friday, and in subsequent emails too that have gone back and forth. And I've talked to a lot of doctors about this, and some people involved in the contact tracing and the epidemiology side of things, and also doctors that are just always reading the latest studies and stuff like that. And the thing that I think the fitness industry needs to realize is, especially in places like Toronto, it's more preventative than it is reactive.
Yeah.
So what they're looking at is this is the second wave. It's in community spread again. And any place that people are inside and breathing without a mask is going to be a high risk. So even if there hasn't been cases where there's been transmission yet, or there hasn't been a lot of transmission in certain places like restaurants and gyms, it's a higher risk. So it's more knowing that if it is going to be in the community, these places could be. And so that it's been, so, if the healthcare is much more risk averse than other industries, so it's been more preventative than anything else.
Yeah.
At least that's my understanding of it from what I've gathered from the people I've talked to. And then, you start hearing this trickle of like, well, there was like this outbreak tied to this. And, then you start to hear it a little bit. And it's just such a tough balance. I think our government officials are put under a really tough balance of like, they don't want to close, they don't want to have the economic impact that they're having, but they have to put public health first. And so it's how do they balance that when the healthcare people are pushing, and especially here in Toronto, we're really pushing for more restrictions, and they're trying to not have to cave to it until they have to. And that's we see the result. We see the closures happening in the hotspots in Ontario and Quebec. Further restrictions that were placed on all areas, before that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree fully with restrictions, and I'd be even willing to close again if that was what it took to keep people safe. My concern and my fight has always been, if I'm closing for public safety, then the public needs to have my back too. That's all. That's kind of where I've always had the messaging.
Yeah, well, not just the public, and I think that, and we'll get more into this, I'm sure, as we talk, in terms of like what gyms can really do, gyms and trainers can do to sort of adapt to this new reality. But it's the government too.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's what I mean when I say public. I mean the government is that's the public. But
and it's one thing to look at like rent relief and look at wage subsidies, and those are good, those help, but those are sort of stemming off existing costs, already. And there's already diminished revenue from closures and from people being safe. And now we're being asked to close in a lot of places. So there's a huge impact. And so for the things like restaurants and gyms, which are asked, okay, in public health, we need you to shut down, there has to be some relief coming from the government. Now, there was an announcement last week from the feds saying that there's going to be some funds, but everyone's super leveraged on loans already. Yeah. And everyone's hurting on the revenue side, and expenses are up. And even if they're closed, they still have to pay rent, even if there's rent relief, and they still have to pay staff salaries. And so there needs to be some sort of direct relief. It's just clear at this point in time that's sort of what needs to happen. And so hopefully, as we see the details of that come out in the next week, we see some programs for particular industries that are particularly impacted by this, and especially when they had to close down again.
Yeah, that's kind of been my grief with the SEBA loan. Like I took the loan out and I spent it in the first month, whereas all of my friends, and I have a lot of friends that own businesses that aren't fitness businesses, they all took that loan out and it's sitting in an account gaining interest, and they're just going to pay the 30 back and get 10 free. Whereas it's like, for me to pay that back by the time it's due, I need to be making $3,000 a month in profit, right? And we're not even breaking even to pay those loans back, right? So we're just going to come to the term of this 2-year SEBA loan and not default on it, but we won't make that period to get that 10,000 grace or whatever. And then we're just going to be paying it back with interest, right? So it's just delaying the inevitable, like keeping us open, but increasing the burden. So you're right. We need some kind of like direct relief. Like why, if we have to close, let's just reduce the cost. Like that's pretty simple. I don't know. It seems simple, but it's obviously not. I think like you can't.
You're going to see attrition, right? And that's where. And again, it's not just the fitness industry, the restaurant industry, the bar industry. You know, these industries are severely impacted by this, and if they don't want to see people go out of business, there's going to have to be something, because it's gonna. If you look at it, I mean, so I've got an economics background. Like that was my undergraduate degree. And if you look at it just like from the economics of it, if you try to look at it from a sustainability standpoint, like a long-term standpoint, having a whole bunch of these businesses shut down and then having either that hole in the economy when things do start to return back to normal with the vaccine or whatever, or having people have to restart those businesses, especially if you look at gyms, because there's so much overhead to get a gym started. So, you know, if you see a number of people close down who've already gotten over some of that overhead, paid for their equipment, paid for whatever it is, and then they all close, and then in the future we have a bunch more open up, it's going to be even harder under those economic services to open up. So you don't want to have these contractions of the industry, especially when you're thinking about fitness, where the counter to that right now is everyone has realized this huge premium of fitness as preventative medicine, and how important, like as much as people are working out at home and doing things like that, a lot of people need their gyms. And that's that tough balance where, and I know we had this debate of like, okay, you know, is fitness an essential business or not? If you ask healthcare people, they say no, because you can do fitness anywhere. You don't have to be in a gym to do fitness. But fitness itself is essential that people have access to it. And so, you know, how do we balance that? I know for myself, like I go to a gym across the street, who is an FIC member, it's a phenomenal gym. I love it. Having now that it's closed down as of Friday, like I'm not happy. I was in such a good routine. I felt safe in there, that they were following really strict protocols, mask mandatory as well. So everyone was really safe. And I had my last lift on Friday, and I just kind of went, like, what am I going to do now? I don't really want to go back to like kettlebells and bands in my exercise ball in my apartment, but I'm going to have to, at least for the next 28 days. So for me, I'm balancing a lot of really interesting things. One is, you know, being a member of the FIC at the national level and running the Ontario Coalition, fighting for gyms and trying to advocate for them and trying to help organize them to like how they deal with this stuff. So there's that sort of that one hat I wear. It's, you know, wanting and being empathetic and trying to do everything we can to, you know, to be, you know, to do what we can to help gyms out. On the other hand, as a software owner who makes software for gyms and trainers to move their business online, or to have, it's actually hybrid business of online and in person. It's, you know, it's making more people have to make that switch, and a lot didn't in the first closure, surprisingly. And so now I'm getting more people, okay, we actually need to do this now, especially like, okay, we're closed for 28 days. We have to do something different. And then as an individual, I'm just like, I'm devastated. I can't go to the gym today or tomorrow. Like I can't go lift weights. And I was just, you know, it had just been a couple of months. You're just getting gains back. You're starting to see strength build again. I'm like, all right, I'm getting back to me. I'm feeling good. And for my own mental health, it was really, you know, really, really important to be back in the gym. And now, you know, now we have to deal with this 28 days of, you know, at least 28 days of, you know, for me as an individual, like I'm going to have to shift back here to stuff in my apartment again. So it's tough just juggling all the gymnastics of it sometimes and just trying to stay objective about it.
So they've closed everything now in terms of fitness facilities in your area? Is that what's
So
going on?
as of Friday at midnight, they closed all gyms, restaurants, museums, casinos, everything. Closed down entirely in Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa, so the hotspots in
Wow.
Ontario. So they announced that Friday afternoon. Everyone kind of had a heads up on it Friday morning. But as of midnight Friday, everything is shut down for people being in, basically people being inside. And some of those places like museums, casinos, people were masked. So it wasn't just a matter of shutting down all non-masked areas. It was like anywhere people are congregating inside, they've shut down, and they say they're going to do it for 28 days because they want to see how it affects the curve. Even though, as we know, most of the spread is happening at private parties, social gatherings,
Yep.
that's, and bars, I guess. That's where it was happening for the most part, from what people indicated from the data. But yeah, they shut it down in Quebec a week before. Quebec was announced a week before. They gave Quebec 4 or 5 days to go. But they as of Thursday, I believe, last week. Quebec is also closed in the hotspots, gyms, restaurants, a similar approach as what they've done in Ontario. And I think that other provinces are probably going through that debate right now as to what they do, especially as we see cases rise. I heard from someone in Alberta, the cases are have skyrocketed in Alberta, for example. I know Manitoba's had some flare-ups as well, BC too. So, I mean, I think everyone who isn't closed, even in the areas in Ontario that weren't closed down, are just very anxious about what is going to happen here. And it's one of those things that's really tough because it's totally out of your control. I mean, no matter how much we lobby publicly and lobby the government, try to talk to them, it's really comes down to how much this thing spreads. And it's really, the virus is really in control of the situation, not the business owner, which is, you're a business owner. I am too. Like you try not to worry about the things that are out of your control. And that one's a huge variable.
Yeah.
Fitness owners right now. I mean, there's really, and this is where I encourage gym owners. And again, I'm sure we'll get into this as we go, is to like, you have to future proof your business right now. You've got to look at like, okay, what is in my control? There's a great point that somebody made on the Ontario call on Friday of just being like, okay, we're totally focusing now that we're closing these next 28 days on everything we can, right? Like, what safety measures can we put in place when we do get open again? What can we do to continue to retain people over these 28 days? How can we adapt our business? How can we move online? How can we, and that's really what I think as any good business owner, that's what you're just gonna have to do is, what can you control and how can you focus on that and use the time, either the time that you're shut down, if you're shut down, or if you're not yet, you need to be proactive. Because I know a lot of people are focused on, saw this interesting curve for me, listening to people who I talked to for months about coming online with Trainer Plus, for example, just say in the summertime, well, it's summer, so numbers are down, but that's expected. Let's see what happens in September. And I went, well, there's a good chance in September there could be a second wave. There's a good chance that those people aren't coming back. So you're not just going to get, that 40 or 50% of members back. So you have to look at how you're going to fill that revenue in another way. And they went, well, let's just see what happens in the fall. And then hopefully it bounces back and we'll get through to 2021 and then it'll quiet down again. And we'll get a vaccine and then we'll get back to normal. And to me, that's just, I try to be pretty honest with people. Like that's hoping for the best case scenario instead of planning for the worst. And I think now people are kind of realizing, oh, okay, I have to adapt or I'm not going to survive. And that's just, you would think that people would have been forced to do that a little bit, in the summertime, but hopefully the necessity now, makes people really rethink, not just sort of like shifting a little bit, but like really adapting the business model, which to me are, evolving the business model, to me are two very different things, like adapting versus innovating. And I think a lot of people tried to adapt and now they're really going to be forced to innovate. And that's going to be, hopefully we see people be able to do that fast enough and really in a smart way that helps them fill that revenue gap with new revenues outside of their member base. And that's going to be, to me, that's going to be the key to survival.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. What I did is I turned my facility into half a supplement, I own a separate business. It's a supplement company. So I sell supplements out of here. And what I've done is I've tried to increase my revenue by selling stuff to people that I have contact information for. Like you have this pool of clients, you want to determine ways to generate other types of revenue from them, right? So if they can't be coming in, well, these people need nutritional products, so I sell these products to them, and that's kind of how I've subsidized my just my rent and all that kind of stuff here. My big concern, and I think a lot of things that scare people, is they don't want to get into a place where they turn their business to be online just to pay the cost of owning a brick and mortar facility, right? So it might get to a place where, does that mean that we should be getting out of these businesses, right? If this is such a big liability, like you got people paying $20,000, $50,000 a month, and they're shifting online to cover those costs, probably not even paying themselves. Like I haven't got to a place where I can pay myself yet. But we're basically just keeping other people afloat, right? Like you're training clients online to give the landlord money so he can feed his family while skipping yourself in the middle. So
well, you're hitting my sweet spot here, man. Which is like this is stuff that I'm creating a whole content series about this week and releasing it as well. As I've been talking about this for a lot of time, and it's really. It really takes you have to think about, the big picture here. And on the one hand, I had one guest on my podcast who's a doctor, who's a brilliant guy, who said, well, fitness companies have to stop thinking themselves as just a brick and mortar business, and now they're a media company. And I agree in some aspects, but I also disagree in others. And it's like what you said, like, well, if I just shift to do some stuff online, why do I still have this? And some have made that adaptation. They've gone, completely online, and they've stopped, they've stopped the brick and mortar. There's a few businesses that have done that to some success, because there you cut out all your overhead. But to me, it's, you've got to think about how you balance those two things, because at the end of the day, people will be able to open up again, and people do need access to a facility. People do need in-person, whether it's group classes, one-on-one training. And so there's the one hand, when I talk about people adapting, they just said, okay, well, let's do virtual training, for example, and let's put some content streaming. So there's two parts there that are really difficult. One is, when you go to virtual training, you're still running into all the same economic issues that you have selling personal training. People having to buy hour-long sessions, 2 of them a week, 3 of them a week, whatever it is. And for most people, personal training is too expensive. The biggest objection to personal training is cost. Yep. So if you're doing it online, there's still a cost objection, even though the price of the session has come down, because there's been a huge rush of supply to the market. And so people now have online options, and naturally when there's a rush of supply, it pushes the price down. So you've seen like the average session, which was about $75 to $100 in Toronto, drive down to like $50 a session online. So you've got, less revenue coming in per session, but you still have that, like, people have to commit $400 or $500 to $1,000 a month to get online training. So there's still a very limited amount of people that can do that. And you're really just trying to sell that to your existing client base. So it's like, okay, we've got 100% of our clients pre-pandemic. How many of them can we shift online? And so you're still getting a fragment of the bigger market, your clients. And it's really hard to then reach out to new markets and say, hey, we're doing virtual training, because now you're competing with everything else that's gone virtual. And it's the same thing with streaming. I mean, if you think about streaming classes, it's a good way of retaining your members. It's a good way to lead generate, but as a revenue source, it's really, really hard to scale. And that's what people have found. They've shifted to like, okay, we're going to put our classes online and we want to charge for it. Okay, well, how much are you going to charge? Because if you're charging like your membership, 40, 50, $60 a month for streaming content, now you're competing with Apple and Peloton and Facebook and YouTube and all this content that's out there. And so attracting new people to that content is going to be very difficult, because unless you're putting out a really top-notch quality product, you're competing with some pretty big, great competitors in that space. So, and people don't necessarily see the value of paying a full membership for just online content. That's what, we're hearing from member bases. So as a tool to retain people, those streaming classes is great. As a way of putting out some content to lead generate, that's good. What I'm really pushing people to do is think about other services in between those two. So what people need more than anything right now is they need a program that they can do from wherever they're doing it, right? So they need a program they can do from home. They need a program they can do if they've got a condo gym, or a gym they can still go to. So if you think about a service like programming, and this is something that, again, I put a lot of content out, where you're giving people like the value of a trainer, you're giving them a program, you're giving them the accountability. So whether it's just an online oversight check-in like through our tool, or whether it's a weekly call, even if it's setting spreadsheets, even if it's not using a tool like ours, setting spreadsheets, like something that is adding that value of like, this is what you need to do, and I'm holding you accountable to it. We're motivating you. I'm making the changes on an ongoing basis to it. Now you've got something that's valuable and has a price point that is, that can start at like the cost of a membership and scale up depending on how much time one-on-one you're spending with people. So we see people doing like for $250, doing a program oversight where they're making the changes week over week, and they're doing a 30-minute call with people at the end of every week. So now you're less than that training, but you're getting a lot of value out of it at the end user place. And other people who are doing stuff for like the cost of a membership, I'm going to give you a program, a trainer's going to give you a program, and you can track it, and they're going to come in and give you changes to it each week, and each month we're going to have that check-in. And so now you're seeing that at like a lower price point. So people are still seeing value in those services. And the thing about those is they work in person and online. So even if you have to shift to online while you're closed, when you come back to being reopened again, you've still got all those services that like now the check-ins can be in person, and the programs can still be tracked online. So you've got this hybrid. And what we see a lot of is a lot of people will start in a programming service thinking all I need is a program. And then as they go, they realize, actually, I need more time from the trainer. So then they start adding sessions to it on month 2 and month 3. And you see people move along this spectrum. A lot of times people move up the spectrum rather than down the spectrum. Like they don't often start with training and then say, okay, I'm good now, I just want a program. That's fine. If people can get to the point that they can have it, you're going to retain them instead of losing them as clients. But to me, it's really about having this breadth of service, and the content that you put out and streaming stuff is ways of getting people into your brand and attracting them, and then saying, listen, if you need more than this, if you're not, self-efficacious on your own, if you don't know what you're doing on the days we're not doing a class, then here we've got this lower cost service that we can do. And if that's not working, we can also add more sessions as you need them. So let's meet people where they're at, sell them a service that works both online and in person. And that way you're going to, number one, you can sell to more of your existing member base, which is one thing people just have to do, like what you did with nutrition. Okay, I've got this existing audience who's paying me monthly. I'm going to need to generate more revenue from them. But to do that, I'm going to have to provide them more value than they're getting out of coming to the facility. So that's one way of doing it. And now you've also got a tool that can reach out beyond, because, if you've got, you can run things like challenges, right? So like a 4-week, 6-week challenge where you say, okay, you get access to our classes each week, plus we're going to give you a program to do on the off days, and a trainer's going to oversee it for you. And then they get a taste of like, oh, this is what it's like to actually have a program and a trainer. Okay, I'm going to convert to this programming or this training service at the end of the challenge, for example. And that is something that you don't have to be a member to be a part of our challenge. So you can, through your social networks, through word of mouth, to your own communities, and it's not geographically based anymore. You don't have to just look at your immediate neighborhood for members. You can reach out beyond it. So to me, that's going to be a real key. And you're right, like just going 100% online. Some trainers can do it. I think it's way harder for gyms to do it, because as much as people have built up their brand, they don't have as big a brand reach as either big chains or these tech companies that are making this push right now. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, that's it. And then the other thing, which we talked about as well, is just how to access new markets. And to me, the two big ones are corporate wellness and healthcare. Like how do we, and they're different than reaching out what you normally would do. And both of those markets have changed dramatically in the last 9 months in terms of what the needs are from a company standpoint for wellness for their employees, and especially like what healthcare is looking at in terms of what they want to do and how they want to support people.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. What I want to talk about, like I use True Coach, I believe. So I think it sounds like it's similar to what you do. So I want you to kind of explain what Trainer Plus is. Pretty much like you're going to pitch it to me, because I feel like it's something I could use instead of True Coach. But basically with True Coach, my clients all have a program. I see them. They're either remote or in person or hybrid clients. And they get videos of everything. And when we close down, they still have the same program with all the videos. They just do it at home or whatever. So tell me about Trainer Plus, how it came about, what it's all about, and try to just kind of make the pitch, I guess, of how it could help somebody in my position.
Sure. I'll even talk about a couple of our True Coaches, one of our sort of close-ish competitors. There's a couple out there, and I'm happy to, talk about the advantages and the sort of pros and cons of all of them realistically, and just let the best product that lie where it will. So for me, I guess starting at the start where it came from, I grew up in the fitness industry. My mom ran gyms my whole life, so I was around the industry since I was a kid. And I was an athlete, and when I retired from playing, I played overseas for a couple of years. When I retired from that, I started as a trainer, always with an eye to, okay, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do something in the sports and fitness realm. Started as a trainer at one of the big chains in Canada, and then moved on to being a gym manager for a smaller chain downtown here in Toronto, and eventually became the director of operations for that chain. So I got to do a lot of things. I managed trainers, I sold training, I sold membership. I got to experiment a lot with what people liked and didn't like. And I saw two major, issues with the industry that needed to be fixed with tech. One of them was everyone needed help from a trainer, no matter how seasoned they were. They needed something from a trainer, but the way the training was sold in these 1 hour blocks was not scaling. So it's a really hard business for people to grow and sustain and make a good living of. Very, very few trainers make 6 figures straight up, just because of the limitations of how many hours they have in a week and how much they can charge for it, how they fill those hours. And so there was a problem with like scalability on the trainer side, but people needed accountability and applied knowledge. And so how do we scale that was sort of, problem number one. And the second one was fitness is a top form of preventative healthcare, but there's still this gap between fitness and healthcare. And that gap exists for a reason. Healthcare is evidence-based, it's behavior change and long-term focused, it's patient-centered. And the fitness industry is much less regulated and not necessarily always evidence-based. It varies from trainer to trainer, gym to gym for sure. And it's very sales-driven, profit-driven, short-term, like what can I sell you today? And then there's very little actual follow-up in the long term or approach to like having a long-term relationship with people. I'm trying to sell that 1 year membership today. I'm trying to sell that training package. So there's an incongruency between the two. So it's how do we scale training? And we know if we can do it properly, then we can solve this gap between the two, which I'm really excited because we're announcing some stuff this month and working on some stuff this month that is very much addressing that gap after years of research and kind of figuring it out from the other side of things as well. So what we did with Trainer Plus, we started with a platform for trainers to be able to prescribe workouts and assessments. And we had a mobile tool that people could track workouts and assessments on. Feedback comes to the trainer. Trainer can look and see what the person put in, both the reps and weights, but also their feedback. Was it just right, too hard, too easy? Notes about an exercise. So you get the whole spectrum of it and then can make adjustments and just update the program and keep that feedback loop moving between the trainer and the client. So it's very much a feedback loop. It's a two-way dialogue between people, which is a little bit different than some of our competitors who, you kind of prescribe and then they track and then you see it and then you kind of prescribe again in the future, as opposed to like the ongoing feedback loop that's happening in Trainer Plus. So that's one of the biggest things. I mean, our assessment tool is super robust. We've got 200 assessment protocols in there, plus people can create their own. So you can really assess anything and have that long-term assessment protocols as well, which is a big feature of ours that is a differentiator for what we do. And then same with exercises, we actually convert everything into a GIF or a GIF, depending on how you like to pronounce it. So it's an animation that people can see. It can be cached on their phone. It can be available offline. So it can be used in more places. People take videos and we convert them into the format we need. Having said that, we're just about to launch a feature where people can link a workout video or an exercise video directly into the program as well. So if you've got your own YouTube, you've got your own Facebook, you can actually have that video and just say, okay, here, follow along the workout while you're following our workout video on YouTube. You can track it here in our app. So that's another differentiator that we're launching very, very soon. And so on top of that, then an insurance company came to me and asked me, can you do something that we can just give a really easy universal benefit to our corporate wellness to employees, cheap? And then gyms would come to me and saying, I want something I can just give to my members as a starting point to generate leads. So we developed a secondary app, which we're rebranding right now. It's called Fitness Plus. We're rebranding it into the Trainer Plus Fitness Library. It has all of our exercises and a whole bunch of workouts, but there's no tracking there. So people can just come and get content and then request a program from a trainer. So it works as a way of like, for those people who are just like, oh, I just need some exercise or workouts. Like, well, here you go. But if you actually want a program to track, you can request it from us, purchase a service, and then we're gonna prescribe it to you on Trainer Plus and track it on Trainer Plus. So that created this. What that did was it opened up this spectrum now where you have like low cost, like if people just want to pay a couple of bucks a month just to get some content, you can engage them. And then you also open up this service loop with programming, and our app can be used in person by the trainer and when the client's on their own. So that's another differentiator. It's a hybrid of in-person and online. So trainers can use it in person. They can track when they're with the client, and then the client can track on their own. So it creates, again, a wider spectrum of use cases. And the other thing that we do is we manage all the follow-up. So every time you assign a program, you do an assessment, we make the trainer put in, when is this program ending? Like, when's this phase ending? Mm-hmm. And also, when is this the next reassessment? So then we remind the client, we remind the trainer, we manage that follow-up. So now when you're thinking about selling something like programming or a different service, you always know where that next touch point is. It's not just going to like kind of go off into the ether. You're just like, okay, this is what we're doing for 30 days. And in 30 days, we're going to reevaluate. So now when you have that spectrum of service, and that was really what we want to do, let's create this wide spectrum of service from, we said, low cost, like just get some content, access to some videos or some workouts, up to training, regular session training. And now that you have this ongoing dialogue, you can take a more long-term approach. And what's been really interesting about that is healthcare loves what we're doing. And the reason that doctors especially, healthcare professionals in general, not just doctors, really like what we're doing, because they want to be able to give something for free to their patients as a starting point, their clients, and they has to have low-cost options. And they don't want to just push people into gyms, because they know gyms are going to try and sell them a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people just can't afford training or even a gym membership. And so when we go to doctors and say, listen, we've got free options to get started with a trainer, like a consult and some content to get started. There's low cost options. And one of the things that we're about to launch a Trainer Plus Health Pro qualification. And one of the aspects of that is you're not allowed to do pushy sales. You have to present you have to have a range of services that start at low cost, and you have to present them and then agree to follow up and have an ongoing dialogue. And so that's what the healthcare world is really excited about. They're like, okay, cool. This is the type of thing I want. We want people moving, but they have to be able to be empowered to take their own path, and it has to be cost effective. And so to add on top of that, another big differentiator with us is we've created these hierarchies, these libraries. So we've got our own Trainer Plus library of workouts, programs, and our paying users have access to all of those templates to get started. And that's common from some of our competitors. There's some content to get started, but we're starting to create libraries that are subsectioned in that. So with healthcare, we're starting to create health specific libraries. And we're actually releasing, this month, we'll be releasing an app, Trainer Plus Health, which is a library of very easy to get started programs that come from some healthcare professionals, some exercise physiologists that work with the sedentary population. They work with people who are just getting started and seniors. And in that app and in our system in general, we're going to be building libraries out that are health specific. So we're starting with cardiac rehab, for example. Some experts in cardiac rehab are building out cardiac rehab programming and templates. We're going to have cardiac rehab programming in Trainer Plus Health. And if somebody asks for a program and they indicate that they have a cardiac issue or are in cardiac rehab, we can then triage it out to a trainer who's got that specialization. And that's another thing that the healthcare world is really, really keen on is, one, yes, we're making sure that all the trainers have a certification if it's general fitness needs, but if they do have a specific need, that we're starting to get into this specialization as well. So that's Trainer Plus it's a pretty big platform. It's I don't look at it as like, we're not just like a tracking tool. Right. That's an element of it. Assessment tracking, but really it's really a platform that allows you to create all kinds of new content and services that you can engage a wide spectrum of people with. And as we get into this stuff on the healthcare side and the corporate, and of course it applies as well to corporate wellness, now it's giving people a tool that they can reach out to those markets in a new way with like the value proposition they need, as opposed to the value proposition that fitness people need.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. I like that a lot. And is this something that's brandable for, let's say a gym takes it on? Are they just going to be giving Trainer Plus to a client, or are they going to be giving the gym's version of Trainer Plus to a client? Like, how does that kind of work?
Well, we kind of balance that. I understand a lot of people want like their own branded app, and in some cases you pay a premium for it, but it's always come down to how much value you get out of it. To me, what people engage with is the content itself. So people being able to create their own exercises, they can create their own videos with their own staff, with their own branding on it. And then what people are interacting with is their branded content. Right? We also are doing the same in our fitness library. and we'll be doing it in Trainer Plus Health as well, where brands can put their own content within our ecosystem. And so that's what place we're moving, and being able to sell subscriptions to that content. So what that does is it kind of, and when gyms come on board, any print versions, for example, they have the logo on it, and we're putting some more places where the logo itself can go within the app. So there's definitely places where there's branding that happens. But the idea is by keeping it into these places, like keeping Trainer Plus as Trainer Plus, keeping our fitness library as it actually creates more economies of scale, because now your brand exists within a bigger marketplace for content. So it's gonna be able to reach a bigger audience as everybody kind of drives, hey, everyone come find my content in this app or in this system. Other people are doing the same thing, and it creates a much bigger audience for people to come and engage with your content. So we kind of, it's kind of like a walk line there, where it's like you have lots of branding within the system. But we used to do custom apps for people, where it was like their content specifically in their own custom app. And it worked okay, but it didn't take off like I thought it would. It wasn't like, there wasn't a huge value on it. As opposed to people just being like, okay, my content can just be in your existing app. So we decided to pull back on that, because it was just, we weren't seeing, for what people were paying for getting a custom app, we weren't seeing a huge amount of value in it. And that's honestly, it's one of the hard things to explain, because people are like, wait, I want my app and my logo on their phone when they open it up. We're like, look, it's called Trainer Plus for a reason. It's Trainer Plus Fitness Library. Like, they're very generic terms. You exist within that. You're a partner, your business, your brand exists within that. And then you can just, reach a bigger audience that way. So that's sort of how we squared away. We're always looking for new ways to add more branding within it, more personalization within it, whether that's just being able to color the app, different things once people are signed in, or different ways like that. But I really firmly believe that by putting people in a system like that, it's going to reach a bigger audience, and everyone's going to benefit from that, as opposed to everybody just trying to go at their own audience. And that's sort of one of the things that we've seen in fitness and in tech, is everybody has been in their own silo and try to compete for their own audience. And you actually see when people collaborate, and even in other industries where there's similar apps like this, like a good example is like reward apps or stuff in the retail space, which is a little bit ahead of fitness. When you have your rewards within a marketplace and an ecosystem, you get those access to those rewards. Or even think something like Uber Eats, for example. You've got your own app for ordering and delivery. Well, if you're in Uber Eats, you're going to get a way broader audience actually coming to you. Yeah. So it's just following on the models that have been proven, in other industries. And once people kind of wrap their heads around that, they're like, okay, I get it. Now I can use this to like drive to my audience, and I'm going to reach a bigger audience outside of it. And it's from a sales perspective, when you say, hey, we're a part of this system, like we've taken the work to be a part of this ecosystem and part of this marketplace, it's actually very validating, because it's a third party validating your content and service, as opposed to you just being like, hey, here's our app for this. Mm-hmm. So I think the personalized apps are really best for things like scheduling, managing your membership, your class bookings, all that stuff. There's great apps out there for that. And that's something that I fully believe you should have a custom version of, and we don't do that. We're not going to do that. We're hyper focused on the training, the content and training side of things, because it's already, fitness management is already a big enough beast. There's already enough things going on. And the key thing that we found in the years that I've been around this is, and again, like the biggest differentiator from us and someone like True Coach, or even Trainerize, some of the guys that are out there that have spent a lot more money than us marketing and getting to an audience, is ease of tracking. So our app, because it's one touch tracking, like the weights and everything's prescribed. So the client just comes in and literally says done set, or flicks a dial, done set, or can even swipe on a whole exercise to complete it. So we've reduced tracking down to 1-2 touches on the client side. And same with on the trainer side, creation is super easy and modifying is really easy, a couple of clicks of a button. And that's the key, because if people have to enter stuff in, the more friction they have to enter, the less likely they're going to do it. And if they don't see the value in doing it, making it really, really, really easy for that, they fall off, and it's harder to like sell people on that side of things. As I'm sure you've experienced some of yourself, like with True Coach, if people are like, oh man, like, okay, I like my program, but I just want to look at it, not track it or whatever it is. So you have to make it You have to make it so easy. And that's where we've put all of our effort into making the client experience as easy as possible. And same with the trainer side, because for gyms, they bring trainers on board. And if trainers are resistant, they're like, oh man, I'm good with my clipboard. I'm good with my paper and pen. So you have to be like, look, there's templates you can get started with. You don't have to create your own content. You just have to come on here and modify it. And like, you can do it in a few minutes, you know? So really making ease of use and making it really intuitive. That's been a real key for us in figuring out that sweet spot of making sure it's something that actually scales for trainers. And so again, like broad audience, that's our goal, flexibility in a broad audience. Whereas a lot of the tools out there, like the ones you mentioned, they're great for trainers who have super engaged clients and whose clients are going to be engaged and like want to make the effort to put into it. Some of them, and I'll admit, some tools are better depending on the whole spectrum you do. So if you prescribe nutrition and workouts together, then there's other tools that are better for doing both of those things. You know, just realistically, because we don't really do much on the nutrition side. Part of that's because we work in healthcare, and the healthcare world is really, really reticent to let trainers prescribe nutrition unless they're properly qualified for it. So we've had to really be careful about that. We work with a few nutrition partners like Precision and like Additional Nutritional and a few people like that. We say, if you want to do nutrition here, you know, use Precision's tools, use their calculator to calculate and generate a meal plan and send that PDF, you know, but yeah, so I think that's you know, to answer your question in a roundabout way. And the last one as well, a little bit, that's one thing that I really learned the hard way. I thought when we built this, people are just gonna be like, great, I'm gonna move online, I'm gonna start selling training, and clients just be like, awesome, my program's here, I wanna track it. It's amazing how few people really care about tracking it, and even like having the history of the whole workouts, what they did 6 months ago, or seeing aggregated stats about it. You know, people, it's really more about the experience for people. It's really about that interaction with their trainer, which is the real value they see. And that's really what I try to hope that the fitness community can realize, like, that's the value you're selling. Just putting content out there, there's tons of content out there, you know, so that's really hard to sell that content. The value is, you know, hold that interaction, that ongoing loop, that accountability and the knowledge that you've got that they don't have, and they need your knowledge no matter how experienced they are in the gym.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I'm definitely going to check it out, because you wouldn't believe how many of my best clients are the least adherent on True Coach, like 0% adherence. Well, they just haven't gone in and actually typed anything in. So I can definitely appreciate making it simpler, like just a swipe and it's done kind of thing. And especially people have different types of phones and stuff. And like some people only look at it on the browser, some people just go in the app. So it can get pretty complicated that way.
I'll tell you a quick story that was really interesting. When we first launched with our first gym, we did a 1 year with the gym where we just worked with them exclusively as we were building our enterprise version. And we had done the like hit start workout, you track each set, and it was down to like, you hit done set, you flick your dial, you hit done set. At the end, it says, do you want to provide it? Like you could click a button to provide feedback. So one, we had to learn that you can't give them the option. You have to put that card in there. It says like, was this just right, too hard, too easy? Make a note. So they have to actually do that so they can give that feedback, because people will skip that step. But it's so important to get that subjective feedback.
Yeah.
Then as we started going, people were saying, well, I don't want to have to track every single exercise. I want to just hit start workout. I want to be able to look at it, and then I want to just say I did this, or start workout. The clock starts. I'm looking at my exercises, so I can just look at it, work out, do my thing. At the end of the workout, I hit done, and it could auto complete everything. So we ended up adding a swipe on the exercise to complete all sets, and a place where you can hit start workout and then complete workout. It says, do you want to complete all your sets and reps? And I was amazed that we had to do it, but when we did it, people were like, especially that gym, and you know, all of our customers subsequently were like, this is awesome, because now people have no excuse. Like they can track a whole workout in 2 touches. You know, they can track an entire exercise, all its sets, in 1 swipe. Like there is no excuse for them not to track this anymore. And it was one of those like nice evolutions in the app when we did it. When we started to see a lot more adherence to it. That, and like, you know, sending notifications when workouts are done, or, you know, vice versa, sending notifications saying your trainer has updated your program. So now they're like, oh, my trainer saw that psychological sticking point of like,
yeah, that's
my trainer saw that, and now, okay, I've got to do this because my trainer's seeing this. And it, you know, it really like helps the adherence for sure.
Good. Awesome. I like that. And one of the things that frustrates me about the one I use right now is I need two different apps, one for communication and one for programming. So do you have a communication built right into yours as well, like messaging and that kind of stuff, or?
So we've purposely kept the communication very context specific. So like they can, you make a note about an exercise, they can make a note when they're done it, and you can go back and forth on that. You can make a description of a workout. They can make a note when they complete a workout, and then you can make a follow-up note about that workout. So they get notification saying like, hey, your trainer just sent you a follow-up note about the workout you just did. And again, it's that stickiness of like, oh, it's right around this. What we found was most trainers, they use text, email, whatever it is already to communicate. So for us to recreate that wheel is like, do we really need to like recreate that and add a whole like messaging suite, which is this big, technical thing to build in. So we haven't gone fully down that road of going like with like direct messaging and group messaging because people already do it. Mm-hmm. We're looking at ways that you can kind of like right now, if you're in the app and you bring up a client, their email's right there and you can just click it and it'll open the email browser and you can just send them an email. Mm-hmm. So like just piggybacking off of existing things. And we're looking at doing the same thing with text message. Like if the client agrees and enters their phone number, that you can just click text and it opens the texting and just kind of go from there.
Perfect.
As opposed to like, as opposed to, trying to keep all that messaging in one place. To me, it actually adds confusion because they've already got their text and WhatsApp and Facebook and this, and then you're adding another thing for them to like just do regular communication on. So we wanted to keep it very specific to the workout itself and the exercise itself.
Good. Awesome. And I like the no nutrition thing because I'm halfway through doing my RD as well to be a dietitian. And I really think that that's not in the scope of most people using this type of app. So not giving them the option for that is probably a safe bet. Yeah. In my opinion, anyways.
Like having macros, most trainers, it's some have a certification for it. That's cool, but the healthcare world is super wary of that. And you're bang on about like, hey, look, I've got a dietitian. If anything, it adds value to that, right? You say like, if you want a meal plan, you want that, like talk to a dietitian. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely one thing I encourage gyms and trainers to look at if they're qualified trainers, as that revenue source. Like you said, you're selling supplements. Nutrition is become a massively important thing right now. People are, at home more, they're cooking more, their nutrition, and they're actually much more conscious of it now than they've ever been. Because before they had the excuse of like, I'm on the fly, I'm going to my job, I'm doing this, I don't have time. So sorry, I'm eating out, I'm ordering out a lot. Now there's no excuse. So nutrition, I think I've heard a lot of people grow that side of the business significantly. If you do offer nutrition plans, if you do offer supplements, things like that, I think there's a real opportunity there for gyms, especially if you're doing it right with the right qualified people.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. Good. Okay, let's quickly move on to the FIC here because you're big into that. And I recently joined that and we got stuff going on here for that. So kind of tell me a little bit about how you got involved and then what your role is and what you think we can do for the industry, I guess, as a whole.
Sure. How I got involved, I was involved with a lot. I was involved with the Prescription Get Active program and I became a provincial member first, the FIC. And as you can probably tell from those calls, I'm fairly vocal. I bring a bit of a different perspective, being a non-gym owner operator and somebody who's always looking at the future of the industry. And so after being involved for about a year as a provincial member, they wanted to grow the board and they asked me to be on the national board. And I think it was at the time, what they really wanted to do was get a more diverse perspective and bring some people who were like vendors and people who weren't just owner operators to bring that perspective to the table. So I was really happy to join that board and be involved in it. And it's tough. I very much shy away from like pushing Trainer Plus. That's not the role when I'm there. The role is like support the industry in general. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of my part in that is sort of twofold. One is the perspective of having a more objective perspective about, whether it's like, hey, this is what the science is showing right now with COVID. Mm-hmm. A lot of times I'll bring stuff up that gym owners might not want to hear, but it's just the reality. And so I try to be very, very realistic about what I'm bringing to the table, because I also talk to a lot of people on the healthcare side and they give a different perspective. So I think a big part of my role is bringing some realism to the table. And then the second part of it is and what I focus on the content is in a constructive way, try to like put ideas out there for people to think about. Like we talked about earlier, okay, let's rethink it with this business model. Let's think about how tech fits into this. And I just don't mean just ours. I mean technology in general, right? Like whether it is, YouTube or Facebook or other things or other tools that, if another tool works better, then great, use that other tool. Cause I think everybody needs to think about this. So it's interesting because for years I've been pushing this message of like evolving the fitness industry, growing past this outdated model that was developed in the 80s of selling 1 hour sessions and year-long memberships. Like it has to change. And I was saying this and I kept saying, if we don't change the business model and how service is delivered, we're never going to get the credibility to reach out into corporate wellness and healthcare. And it's funny because this pandemic has actually accelerated that. So it's like for years, I've been, saying it and preaching it. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh yeah, I've got to do this. And so, I think a lot of my role in general in the Canadian industry and in the industry in general, given what I do and given the fact that I talk to like dozens or, I've talked to hundreds or thousands of trainers and gym owners and getting different perspectives and hearing what works, what doesn't work. And so I can filter all that information into like, look, this is what I'm seeing working out there. These are some ideas that you can take from this and like figure out what works best for you. So I think a lot of it is just, like I said, bringing that other perspective that's the non-owner operator perspective, balancing between healthcare and fitness a little bit, and then really trying to help people deal with like how they change, how they adapt, how they evolve their business, and all the things they need to do for that. So I'd say that's really my role and kind of how it came about. And as I said, it's been it's been very time consuming in the last 9 months. It's been, obviously we've been stepped up those things, and then somehow I ended up organizing the Ontario Coalition almost by default to an extent. Yeah. I just wanted to see me. I'm just like I call it GSD, right? Just like get stuff done. I usually don't say stuff, but just get stuff done is my answer. I'm just like, get stuff done, get it done, let's go, push. Mm-hmm. So that's really a lot of times my role. So when I saw like, okay, Ontario needs to be organized, I just did it. And it's been good to be sort of a neutral person doing it as opposed to an owner operator. But, then you're also balancing all the interests of all the owners and operators from different sizes, different chains, boutiques, everything else. And it can be a little bit taxing, but at the end of the day, for me, if the industry, supporting the industry and making the industry better, that's what I care about first. I grew up in this industry, so I really care a lot about it. And I know that at the end of the day, if we're doing that, if I'm doing that, it's also giving me this position of thought leadership that eventually people are like, okay, well, this guy's made some sense and this guy's helped me. So let me look into like what he does at the end of the day. Let's look at Trainer Plus and what it can do for us. So, it does work kind of both ways.
Yeah. Awesome. No, I've definitely seen the impact that you've had so far in the industry and stuff like that. And especially the FIC's role in pushing and advocating for us. I know I've touched on this in the national meetings and especially in the provincial meetings, like as an owner operator, small business, relatively small business, I felt alone, like desperately alone. I had no direction. I didn't know what to do. And the FIC gave me like some guidance, and being at the same table as people like you and owners of these massive chains, it gave me the confidence to keep going, made me think outside the box, because most business owners think we know best, right? Like I've been doing this so long. I've been in the industry 20 years. I know what I'm doing. And it's kind of like, well, sometimes you need voices like you who you don't own a gym, but you've clearly got the expertise and the knowledge to think about something other than the only thing that I know. So
it's been hard for me to figure out how to always tactfully message that, to be honest with you, because sometimes I'm just like, hey, like you guys, you're not seeing the big picture here. And that, like, being that way hasn't always worked. I've like, after some of those calls, I've gotten messages from people at times been like, hey man, like you need to, change how you say what you're saying, because, and what, I understand, like gym owners are very anxious right now, and you've got what you've done forever, and your bubble, and you're worried about these things. So to go out and say messages like, no, like gyms are safe. Yeah, your gym might be safe, but we can't just say that given the whole messaging and given what's going on from healthcare right now, or gyms are essential, or some of these things that like we all feel that, mm-hmm. but we've got to balance it with like how we're perceived from the public. And that's one of the gaps I find with the industry, and they're getting better at it now. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, those bigger chains are more conscious of it than I thought they might be. But like the public perception of the industry is very different from the industry's perception of itself. and how that gap gets closed, because they're just like, the public is like, these people, yeah, it's a thing, but it is like a luxury, it's a service, it's all about sales. This is the way that fitness is perceived because that's been their experience with it. They know fitness is good for my health, but the fitness industry might not have my health first in mind.
Yeah.
And that's a gap that some people close very well. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of gym owners and trainers and people and operators who, like, they do really care about the people. They want to care about the people, but you've also got to make money at the end of the day. And so how we balance those two things is very difficult. And I find in the past, there's been like the revenue and the profit has been the focus and not as much the care. And I advocate for this a lot. I put a ton of content on this. If we actually put the care first and taking a long-term approach to our clients' goals and that relationship, the revenue will come.
Yes, I agree.
You might sacrifice a little bit in the short terms in terms of, like, you might not sell as many training packages if you don't push as hard in the short term, but you're going to sell more services to more people in the long term by taking that approach. And I think we're starting to see that now more. I'm starting to see that accelerate a little bit more. People realizing, like, yeah, and that's one of the amazing things that's happened from, one of the positives that's happened from this pandemic is watching the Canadian industry come together and collaborate. Yeah. And really, like you said earlier in this, like, I'll shut down if I have to, like, because you're putting the health of your members and your staff and the public first. Mm-hmm. And so now that we've switched that mentality a little bit to, like, okay, I've got to do this for the best interest of the sustainability of my business. But because I'm a, especially Canadians, like, I've got to think of the good of the whole ahead of myself. Mm-hmm. Now starting to take that mentality into how we operate businesses, our fitness business. Mm-hmm. I think that that's going to make a big change as the industry, like, adapts and as we see how the industry evolves moving forward.
Definitely. No, I agree 100%. I think there's going to be big changes. I think the whole industry in itself is going to change. I think we're going to see a lot just fall by the wayside. I know here locally, there's specific types of businesses that just don't exist anymore. Like, they've all shut their doors. Because they refused change, because they were impersonal, because there was rarely staff. Those types of businesses, they're like 24-hour type businesses. They just can't operate, right? They're not there. They don't care. Whereas businesses like mine, where I'm an owner operator, I'm here 7 days a week. I know every single member's name, their story. Yeah. I take an actual interest in their well-being. I'm confident I can get through this. Even if we have to shut down, I know that these people will still be here when I reopen. I just need to create a business that sees their interest as number one. And I think that all of the businesses that do that, regardless of how long this takes, we're going to come out the other end okay, I think. And maybe even better, like, if the government does subsidize the closures, we could actually come out of this ahead, not even behind, I think. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm cautious, but I think that things can actually look good for our type of
that's
business.
Where I think the big opportunity is healthcare, because, like, healthcare and corporate wellness, there's more of an emphasis on having people active and healthy. Mm-hmm. And so I think stuff that I've been working on personally, but also the board and other people in Canada and around the world have been working on, trying to get, like, how we get fitness as preventative care into the conversation is actually accelerating now, because there's way more of a concern on mental health, especially of people being isolated, physical health if people don't have access to facilities and the normal stuff. So there is things going on that are pushing that. But really the fitness industry has to realize, like, how to approach that market. And I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but, like, that market needs a different approach and value proposition than our normal person that walks in the door looking for a gym membership. And to me, that's where there is a real opportunity. We're starting to see, we're involved in programs like Prescription Get Active, which doctors are prescribing, activity, and people are taking that prescription into a facility. It's only in Alberta and Ontario right now. Manitoba has been sort of circling, trying to get organized as well, potentially in 2021. Another thing I'm really excited about, we just launched a partnership last week with an app called GoGet.fit. So it's made by a doctor, and it's a behavior change based app. People come in and the doctor prescribes it. Their doctor actually will have them download it right in the office with them. And then it starts by just saying, what do you want to do? Do you want to go walking tomorrow? Okay, cool. What time can you go walking tomorrow? Let's walk for 10 minutes. Let's put your shoes by the door right now so you remember, right? So it starts with these little behavior change modifications. And then one of the things it asks them is like, do you want help from a coach, from a trainer? Do you want a workout program? Do you want to get a consult from a trainer? Here's a marketplace of services you can get. One of them being like, you can get a program and work with a trainer. And that's now going to a Trainer Plus Health Pro is what that's going to go to. And so that app is, again, like doctors are, it just is launching in Ontario right now. It was at the Association for Family Health Teams conference last week. So I got introduced to all the family doctors in Ontario of like, here's an option to give people, because we know that you want them to be active, but you don't know where to start. Well, here, these two apps, GoGet.fit plus Trainer Plus, they give this wide range of options that start with a bunch of free things for the person to get started. And then as they start getting moving, they start getting down their journey, then it prompts them to say, hey, is it time to actually talk to a coach or a trainer now? And so it's a way for trainers and gyms to engage a whole new audience. And if you look at the stats, I'm a stats guy. So 17.2% of people have a gym membership. It's somewhere between 15 and 20% that get their weekly activity, right? It's the other 80% of the market, 80+% of the market that needs our help, that isn't getting it. So it's apps like that, like this partnership that we've got. It's programs like Prescription to Get Active that are actually opening up that much, much, much larger market for fitness. But it has to be done like this. Like it has to be done like with get them in with Go Get Fit and like a message or two from a trainer or a consult first. And then when they're ready, let them cross the bridge. But that way they're a lot more likely to be ready for a service than just like the random person who their doctor said you need to get moving, right? Yeah. So that's the type of example of like stuff that is happening that I think is going to be an opportunity for people. And as I said, we just announced that partnership with Go Get Fit last week, and we've got this Health Pro stuff, and like our whole new health sort of division ecosystem is coming online here in October, and I'm really excited about it. It's been sort of the culmination of 5 years of work to just, because like yourself, like trainers and gyms, they're always going to be able to find ways of engaging that market. And for me, it's like how I've learned that I tried to coach people like, hey, you can go reach this market like this. And they just weren't able to quite do it. And this way we're just like, this is it. This is how you do it. So come play in this, this is how these are the criteria for you to be able to play in this marketplace and get leads that are coming straight from doctors and healthcare professionals. Here's what you need to do. And so that's where I'm really excited about this for us, because I think it's going to be a big turning point for us and also for the industry, as well as like a real practical way of reaching out to that market, which I think is where the most opportunity is going to be moving forward.
I like that. I'm actually super excited to hear that, because I know in Manitoba we don't have anything like the Prescription to Get Active. And the funny thing is, 5 years ago when I was starting my business, I actually made up prescription pads on Vistaprint, and I went to every single doctor in the area, and I sat down with every single one that I could, and I said, here's a prescription pad, write what you want the client to do, tell them to come to my gym, I'll give them 30 days free, and let's get them doing the things you want. And so I had people coming into the gym with this little prescription pad signed by their doctor. We get them on this 30-day free trial, stick them with the trainer for a free assessment, and we get them to start moving. But it's still really hard to sell activity and sell gyms to doctors, right? A lot of them don't get the education about exercise and nutrition and fitness, and others are just very resistant. I still, like, my GP still cautions me on lifting weights, and I've been with this guy for 10 years, right?
Well, so you've identified a few challenges, and it's funny because you're probably about the 100th gym owner who's told me that story, right? I made a prescription and I went to the doctors, and it didn't work, and we're like, right? And even Prescription to Get Active has had challenges as it's gone. Alberta, even here in Ontario, when we launched here last year, because you've nailed one of the major issues, right? Healthcare professionals aren't necessarily trained on this side of things. Most of them, you won't get disagreement that like activity is good, but like what type of activity or fitness is good, in general for people, but they don't know themselves, like, this is what you should do. So they need to triage that to somebody who's a professional, but they don't trust to necessarily give it to any gym or any trainer. They need to trust who they're giving it to on the other side of it. And they also know that not most of their people can't necessarily afford that membership or are ready to. And the other thing is those people, especially if you think about this, and I'm sure you've had people like this in your gym, right? I've had that person when I managed gyms who came in, and you could tell like they've never been in a gym before. So they were super apprehensive just to walk in the door, let alone are they ready to like buy a membership or buy training. I remember some of my members who, and again, I was like you, I knew every member by name. I knew their story. Everyone that walked in, I was able to say like, "Hi, John," and they're like, that made a huge difference because they knew that they were coming in. And I always said to them, like, I'm going to do this assessment. I'm going to give you options. And then you're going to get a free session. We're going to follow up, right, in 30 days, whatever you decide. Because at the end of the day, you'd be better if you work for the trainer 6 days a week, right?
Yeah.
Nobody disagrees with that.
Yeah.
But the people are so apprehensive and they're not ready to make a big financial commitment. They haven't seen the value yet. They need to like get into it and get comfortable. So they need to be eased into it, this population. And so that's the big challenge, right? And that's what I think Go Get Fit like helps with. Prescription is to get active is a way of again, like they're focused on educating the doctors, and they work with Exercises Medicine Canada, who's also a partner of ours, in doing the education side on the doctor side to say, listen, you don't need to know what to tell people to do activity wise. You can trust that these people do know how to do it, and it's creating that bridge from them to like the options, and it really takes speaking their language. And a lot of gym owners don't necessarily know that language and that value proposition. So working with Go Get Fit, that's what we're developing. Is like, it's not even a prescription pad. Like, you don't need a prescription pad anymore. Although people feel like that prescription, there's a New Zealand study that showed that people were more adherent because they felt like it was something they had. But other doctors would be like, that only, like when people get what's it called? Like when people have a virus and they get antibiotics. One doctor told me, only 42% of people get their prescription for antibiotics. It's like, you think, how many people you think are going to redeem an activity prescription, right? Yeah. So like a little bit of the other side, like the doctor's perspective, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting that the adherence is so low. So that's the challenges. And this is what I think some of these programs are starting to do. It's addressing what you said, is to say, so to be able to, we're making materials that people can take the doctor and say, hey, listen, I'm part of this ecosystem. It's a health-based fitness ecosystem. So it's not me saying my gym's awesome, I can help. It's me saying this third party, which was developed by doctors and in consultation with doctors. It's got apps and tools and resources for everybody from free up until paid stuff. And I'm validated by them that I will adhere to a certain set of protocols that are in line with health, like with your perspective. And if I don't, I get kicked out of that ecosystem. So I have to do these things. I have to follow the rules in this out. So, I mean, it's not that long an explanation, but it's just like, look, hey, I'm now a Trainer Plus Health Pro. I'm part of the Go Get Fit Trainer Plus system. This is what that means. If you give people this free app, it gets them started down the journey, and you can just put your email in there. Like, if they want to coach, then put my email on there, and when they're ready, they can through that app, they can request our help, and we'll connect them, and we'll help guide them down the journey. And when they're ready to get a program or work with a trainer or come into a gym, then we'll be there, and we'll have established that relationship with them already, having supported them along that starting path. And that's exactly what doctors want to hear. We've gotten really, really positive feedback from that approach, and they're like, okay, you're solving my major problem, which is I want to give people activity, but I don't know, and I don't trust just to give it out this way. Mm-hmm. And I need to be able to do it in a minute. Like, that's the other thing with doctors, right? One doctor told me, I need to be able to do it in 15 seconds. Like, because we looked at linking the things from Trainer, like our data from Trainer Plus, into the EMR system. And doctors are like, I need to be able to open a thing and it just shows me a summary of their fitness, and I can look at it and go, okay, green or red, good, 15 seconds. Like, that's all the time I have in a consult with a patient to look at fitness. So, it's solving that major value proposition for the doctors. This is easy. You don't have to think about it, and it's going to be it's patient centered, and we're empowering your patients to take their own journey and giving them the tools and resources to do that. And we're just a part, as a gym owner or trainer, we're just a part of this bigger ecosystem that helps do this, and that's been built by doctors and behavior change specialists, and taking the right approach for your patients. So it makes a big difference when you're coming at it with that value proposition, as opposed to just like, hey, I'm awesome, like, send people to me.
Awesome. I like that a lot, and I'm very interested to be a part of that. So, okay.
I will definitely be getting that stuff out. I'm sure that I'll get some stuff out through the FIC once it's ready to go.
Good. Awesome. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time here, so I don't want to take up too much more. Give us an idea where people can find out more information about One Trainer Plus, to your content, where they can find you, and maybe just anything else you want to mention here before we wrap up.
Sure. So I'll mention I'll plug a few things as it is. I mean, for us, our website is trainerpl.us. So it just spells trainer plus, but the dot is in front of the US. And from there, you can sign up. It's free to sign up for any trainer. You get up to 2 clients. There's no time limit on that. So you get 2 clients for free plus yourself to get started on the app itself and try it out. And then when you get to the 3rd client, that's when you move up into a paid tier. We also have programs for gyms where we add a set of features for the managers and shared libraries and some other things if gyms want to engage with us. And usually that just starts with a demo, which you can book through our website. Content wise, we put a ton of content out on our YouTube channel. So just search for trainer and the word plus, and you'll find us on YouTube. And that is our podcast, but that's also a lot of these tutorials. We put a lot, and everything's free. We try to get as much content out there. My attitude is like, if we're helping the industry in general, that's our role, and people will use our tool if it fits for them, but I'm happy to put that content out. The podcast itself is called The Future of Fitness. So if you search for The Future of Fitness on Spotify, Apple, anywhere like that, and usually we're having conversations with people in fitness, but a lot of healthcare people, like leaders in the industry, just about, from their perspective, what they're seeing in terms of this and where things are going. So usually try to keep it pretty informative and pretty future focused as it is. Some of that content has been a lot about reacting to COVID as well, and having what the experience is like from the other side of things, from gym owners as well on that side of stuff. So download The Future of Fitness or subscribe to it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you need a tool, trainerpl.us is the website. And for anyone who's listening to this who is a Canadian gym owner, operator, even a trainer, I just encourage people to get involved in the FIC in some way. Just because, we have a lot of the industry working together here, and we're always going to be stronger when we work together, and we're stronger approaching the government collaboratively. And it's really, as you said, to you as an independent gym owner, it's been super beneficial for you just to be able to hear what's going on and be a part of it. So I really believe in the industry continuing to collaborate together. So just would really encourage people to get involved in the FIC if they can, in any way, shape, or form, if they're in the fitness side of things. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Awesome. No, it's all great information. A lot of me just sitting and listening to you today, but that's what this podcast is about. It's about me just sitting down, talking to people and absorbing as much as I can, and just sharing that information with other people. So I appreciate you taking the time today to reach out and give us all this information. Again, I encourage people to go take a look at all the content you're going to be putting out in terms of how we can adapt our businesses going forward, because we do have to change. We can't be resistant to change, or we're just going to fall by the wayside. So yeah, no, I appreciate your time. And again, I wish you luck with everything that you're doing. I know lots of good things are going to happen in the future for you. So just stick with it and we'll get through it here. So
thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm really happy to always rant and rave about fitness and go on about it. Obviously, it's a passion of mine. So really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully same thing. We'll talk later, and we'll keep things moving forward.
awesome.